Hi everyone, I'm Ali, I'm an architect, and today we're going to talk about 5 things to consider when you're choosing a work placement or practice. So let's go! Okay, so I know it's really easy for me to say choosing a placement. Sometimes when you're looking for a work placement or a practice, then you're looking for just something that you can do. I've been in that position because both times when I was looking for work experience / placement, paid placements, because in architecture they need to pay you. It was during economic crashes, so that made it just an extra bit difficult. So I know how you might be feeling if you're feeling you need to take something, but you should also think about what it means for you and what it means to your career, and whether or not it's helping you maybe get somewhere you want to be, and equally whether it's helping you figure out what you don't want to do. That's also like valuable time, so don't think that it's not. This advice hopefully is useful whether you're doing like a year out after your bachelor's degree, or whether like you're doing a bachelor's that's mixed with like a few days in practice and a few days in uni, or also whether you're looking for something for after your master's, which could potentially be like a longer term job that you're maybe going to stay in. So 5 quick tips on that, and then hopefully guys we'll get to new videos that are actually about like part 3 and those questions and answers to stuff. But work has been pretty busy as ever, so it's really difficult to do videos like that I want to put a bit more time and thought into. But anyway, let's get on with this. So number 1, do you already have a specific area of interest? So this is something that's really important to help you focus your mind and also try and like narrow down your search criteria. Is there anything in architecture specifically, whether it's a topic that's come up at uni or just through like your own reading or generally interest, that you could find a practice that really focuses on that and it would allow you to get a bit more out of that placement? So for example, for me, when I did my part 1 experience, that was a year out, and I was really interested in conservation and heritage buildings, and I managed to get a placement at Simpson & Brown Architects in Edinburgh, and also some stuff that I did there. But basically that was really great for me because it helped me realise that I really did love working with like existing and particularly historic, so listed or graded buildings. And yeah, it was amazing. Really, really nice office to work in. And as I've said in my About Me video, I probably should have stayed there a little bit longer than I did. But things like that can help you kind of find your way in a really diverse industry. But it doesn't mean that you need to stay in that path once you've done it, So it's a good time for you to try things out during placements. So whether you're thinking just simple things on whether like you want to do like massive, tall, high-rise buildings, commercial buildings, like residential developments, or whether you want to work at like the other end of the scale, which is like with individual like homeowners doing sort of refurbishments and extensions or new build houses, those kind of things, if you have any idea, then that can really help you choose practices that really fit you. And you always do better in like cover letters and interview and everything if it's something that you actually really personally feel like is kind of the right fit for you. So that's the first thing I'd advise, is you really think about whether there's a specific interest in architecture you already have and whether you can find a placement that helps you explore that a little bit more. 2 is, are there skills that you specifically want to gain, and can your placement help you with those? This is another one that's very similar to the first point, but it's kind of about you thinking about what you might want to do or what might help you, even if it's just sort of selfishly in uni and things. Doing things in practice is different because you're doing it every day and you're doing it for someone else. So it's not like at uni when you're trying to force yourself to learn a new software or something and you haven't got time to do it, or you're trying to figure out how you can fit it into your project and fit it into your deadline. When you're working for somebody else, you obviously have to do it, and it's a really good environment to learn because there's usually people around who have a lot more experience than you and you can pick stuff up a lot quicker. So this can mean, like I say there, like software. So it could mean like specific kinds of modelling software or CAD software and stuff, but also more general topics that are part of the architect skill set. So things like working directly with clients, because there are architects who often never do that, and there's architects who do that every day. So there's the kind of practices where there's a very different situation with what you personally would have the opportunity of doing. One great thing is getting experience in planning applications and things like that, because that's like a bread and butter job for architects, and a lot of graduates don't know kind of the first ideas of that, and it's really good to just get some exposure to planning projects or the planning process and applications. And equally building regulations, same kind of thing, learning the sort of legal framework that the building and construction industry working in the UK is great, and most practices will give you kind of valuable experience in that. But some bigger practices won't give you specific exposure to those topics in very much detail. So sometimes that means you need to like supplement your own learning with things or look at a different kind of practice. So you should really think about what it is that you maybe want to gain from what you're interested in at uni, but also what you're interested in doing in the future, and try and find a practice where you really love the kind of work that they do and the way that they do it, the style that they have, all that kind of thing, because you're really going to pick that up and like absorb that into who you are as an architect going forward. And it's something I see now when I look back on things, but you don't realise when you're choosing it that these things are kind of starting to mould you in a certain direction. Number 3, and this is a question I get asked a lot, is a small or large practice better? And so this is a really difficult question, and obviously a really personal choice. Again, it's something that you really need to think about and decide what's maybe best for you and the kind of career that you potentially want to have. And always bear in mind, you can change your mind later down the line. Like, it's not like a fixed thing, not set in stone or concrete. So for me, this is a question that I work at quite a big practice. I've talked to other professionals who work in smaller practices, and they've asked about sort of hiring people from bigger practices and from smaller practices and what the difference is. And I'm not in charge of hiring anybody or anything like that. But from my personal experience, I worked at much smaller practices before I worked for Allies & Morrison, as I do now. And obviously that's quite a large practice. And I think that in a smaller practice, in my experience, you get more exposure of more kinds of work and more detail of every phase. So from the moment I started working at Simpson & Brown and at Shaw & Jagger, I was client facing, I was in meetings, I was given a voice on those things, and I was encouraged to be part of that process. And equally, I was also on site and had a lot of site experience. And one of the things that's key in this decision for me is people who are going into doing their part 3. And a lot of the time they don't have very much construction experience. Bigger practices handle stuff on site differently. And so usually there's just not a lot of opportunities for you to do that, because they tend to be design and build contracts, and it tends to be quite a closed team with people who've been working on that project for years potentially. So you can sort of shadow a job and things, but it's difficult for you to get into it in the detail. Whereas at Shaw & Jagger, where I worked for 3 years after my master's, I was given an amazing opportunity to design myself and from scratch, and then see the building process and run the contract administration under an architect's guidance, obviously, but on Linghome Kitchen in Keswick. And that's not an opportunity a lot of people get, to build an actual building when you have quite recently graduated from your master's degree. But that was because it was a small practice, and because they kind of could give you those opportunities and also give you the support to do that. Whereas in bigger practices, they kind of just can't risk having people have that much freedom. So you tend to be working more in specific silos. But the flip side of that is that you pick up things in really great detail. So if you're working like technical design and things in a big practice, you're going to know that so much better because it's what you're doing very regularly. And also there's quite a lot of breadth in a big practice of the kind of jobs that they take on. So if you're looking for bigger kind of roles, or being able to switch between things like urban design and master planning to like flat layouts and residential developments and stuff. So intensely personal decision. Personally, working in a big practice now, I'm really glad I worked in a small practice first, and that I kind of understand the job, and also that I've been part of a really small team that has to be really flexible. That's something that works really well in a big practice, because you kind of have to be ready to just get stuck into anything in a small practice. And I think big practices do appreciate that as well. But when you've graduated and only ever worked in big practice, it's difficult because you just don't feel like you can flex that much and just take to things, because there's people who are so much more expert at that than you. So yeah, my preference would be small, at least to start with, to give you a great overview of everything and to give you potentially some construction experience, which is so valuable. But that's my opinion. Your opinion might be different, and you might really just want to focus on like larger practice and the kind of projects you can get in larger practice. And obviously there's nothing wrong with that, but it is a really a big thing to think about and to consider when you're looking for a practice or a placement. Number 4 is, what sectors do you maybe want to work in? So this kind of tallies up with the others. And yeah, we're spinning out to try and make a 5 things video, but it's another important consideration. So ever since the economic crashes of the past, then smaller practices have got a lot more diverse, and they do tend to do things like master planning and cultural buildings and stuff like that, much more than like prior to like me being in the industry, where they tended to be more typecast that big architecture firms got those opportunities. But still, if there's like a specific sector that you're interested in working in, it's really a good idea to look if there's like specialist practices, and there usually is, that work in those sectors. So that's things like education, so doing school buildings and everything, or like healthcare, or residential developments, big residential developments, or like I said before, conservation, or also just like individual homes. So, you know, one-off houses for individual residential clients. It's like all those kind of things are really interesting to get into, or whether you're also interested in like urban design and things, or whether you're not, because I know people now who've changed their degree slightly. So I know people who've gone on to an architecture degree and then worked in practices where they get a chance at master planning and urban design and things, and they actually prefer that kind of scale of working, and then they go back to do a degree that's much more focused on that. And then equally the other way around, they go to a practice and they find, oh, I really like doing this like residential development. I'm actually going to do my master's part-time and stay here and do more of this because I really enjoy it. So it's interesting. And also it can work out the opposite way. So I once did some work experience, not even paid for. I was quite young in my bachelor's degree, for a practice that used to do like big sort of healthcare and education stuff. And I didn't really love that. It wasn't really what I was interested in doing. And that really helped me like form where I wanted to go in my career and know whether or not something was right for me in the future. And all that experience helps you choose that. So there's sort of no bad choice in a placement, especially if you take the riskier choices when you know it's either like a year out or a few days a week. Sorry about that. And that'll really help you form where you want to go in your career. And then when you get to something like part 3, you're looking back on all of this and seeing how all these things kind of led you to what you're doing at that time and where you might want to go as well, in like future years. Number 5, and possibly the most important, especially considering we're in the middle of a global pandemic that's still kind of ongoing, don't panic if you can't get a placement. So it can be really daunting to try and get a placement. I was applying to like hundreds of practices before I got like interviews and things. The time I was applying was a crash. Loads of qualified people were out of work and I was trying to get a placement. And it was really, really difficult. And that's when I managed to just get my 3 months at Simpson & Brown. And as I say, it was really valuable. I probably should have stayed there longer. But the point is, you got to just keep persevering. It is difficult, and any job hunt isn't like the easiest thing in the world. The main thing is, if you can't get a placement, then there is other things that you can be doing to help push your career forwards, and really just not to take it personally and to keep trying. Obviously, you can improve your CV, your cover letter, your portfolio, all those kind of things, but you can be using that time constructively as well. So great things to do are to look into the planning process, look into building regs, look into specific software that maybe you didn't get an opportunity to learn or try out. Like, you know, get yourself like some trials with Adobe stuff and try some things out, especially if you're between going back to university again. If there's anything that can enhance when you go back to university or help you think about what you might want to focus on more, the kind of courses you might want to do, that's all really helpful. And you can do that to a certain extent without relying on a placement. So anything where you think, oh, I just have never really had time for this. Even things like going through and organising all the photos of like models and your portfolio you have and getting on top of all of that, because like we all never have time to do that properly. So it's like, use that to your advantage and really just don't panic. It's not going to look terrible if for a reason you didn't get a placement. And it's going to look great if you kind of go out of your way to find something for yourself to do. I know it's kind of a little bit of a different situation, but when I couldn't find a job when I was first looking in London, I was doing 2 other projects in the rest of the UK, so one in Edinburgh and one in the Northwest, and just doing those independently as like a, you know, trainee architect or architectural assistant. And yeah, project managing things, running jobs, drawing up details, managing contractors, all that kind of thing. And it just shows that you want to do the job regardless of whether or not someone's going to give you the opportunity. And people see that and then they will give you the opportunity. So mostly don't be disheartened, don't panic, and yeah, just try and continue and find something else to focus on, that's something that's going to be useful to you in the future. So yeah, that's it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day wherever you are, and I will see you next time. Bye. Maybe cut that.